As I said, I am about 14 subscribers away from my goal of 500 on Patreon. So patreon.com/DannyHaiphong. Please do support this work. It's how you sustain it, right? There are links in the description. It's how you sustain it. It's how you keep this channel going. And it's how you keep the work sustainable over time. So lastly, and I'm going to do this quickly, but I thought it was important. We have a corporate media. We have a Western media calling for World War III. We do. We have a Western media calling for World War III. And so, I mean, this isn't new. We all have seen it. We've seen it in many different outlets. But Mr. Simon Tisdall, came out with an op-ed yesterday on Sunday. And he said, Putin is already at war with Europe. There's only one way to stop him. And what way is that, he says? Well, Putin's weaponized food, energy, and refugees, spreading economic and political pain across the continent. Sanctions don't work. A land for peace deal would be a disaster. So basically, a negotiated settlement would be a disaster. Only the military route remains. That's just the headline. Only the military route remains. So, I mean, this article is unhinged, and I do not want to read it all because I do not want to give this guy the time of day. But let's just go through some of it, okay? So he said, time to wake up and smell the cordite. Like shockwaves from an exploding missile, Vladimir Putin's war on Europe edges rapidly westwards, blasting its way through front doors of homes, businesses, and workplaces from Berlin to Birmingham. Its fallout seeds a toxic rain of instability, hardship, and fear. I mean, that this guy is allowed to write this is criminal. The idea the Ukraine conflict could be confined to Ukraine, NATO's politically convenient grand illusion, and that Western sanctions and arms supplies would stop Russians was always nonsense. Now engaged by Kiev's stubborn resistance and hell-bent on punishing the punishers, Putin's aim is the immiseration of Europe. Putin's aim is the immiseration of Europe. So it's Putin's fault. Just like Putin's price hike, Putin's gas tax, it is Putin's fault. Weaponizing energy, food, refugees, information, Russia's leader spreads the economic and political pain, created wartime conditions for all. A long, cold, calamity-filled European winter of power shortages and turmoil looms. And like a coin-fed gas meter, the price of Western leaders' timidity and short-sightedness ticks upwards by the hour. So Simon Tisdall, I mean, if it wasn't going to hurt working class people so badly, which it is in Europe, and of course it is already hurting working class people in Europe and the United States, I would laugh at this because a long cold, calamity-filled European winter of power shortages and turmoil looms sounds like a great thing if it inflicts these ruling class bastards. But of course, it's going to inflict on us, the people. So Russia's destabilization operation, social media manipulation, cyber attacks, diplomatic double talk, nuclear blackmail, plus its unrelenting slaughter of civilians in our Ukraine will only intensify Europe's state of siege in the months ahead. The West's fanciful belief it could avoid continent-wide escalation is evaporating fast. So this guy is a cartoon. He's a comic book. He's talking about Putin's war. It's all Putin's fault. Putin is going to freeze you to death. Putin's going to destroy your pensions. Putin's going to devalue your wages. Putin's going to put you in a Sri Lanka-style meltdown. This is what he's talking about. And so I want you to see it at the end, toward the end, because I don't want to spend too much time on this guy's screed. But at the end, he says it quite clearly. All right. He says here, so the obvious escape route is a land for peace deal with Putin agreed over Ukraine's dead bodies. This is the kind of shoddy sellout which has influential advocates. If, and it's a big if, Russia returned to business as normal, it would advocate Europe's suffering, though probably not Ukraine's. So basically what he's saying is that Putin is only doing, Russia and Putin is only doing everything it's doing because of Europe. And this is a reaction, obviously, to the fact that the reason why Russia is conducting its special military operation is because of NATO expansion. And so Simon Tisdall is the pinnacle of what it means to be a servant of NATO. And what he's saying is that Europe is going to be made to suffer, not Ukraine, because if business were to return to usual, meaning there was a negotiated settlement, that Europe would be the ones to suffer, and Putin would pursue that. There's no evidence of that. But you don't need evidence. Such a deal would be a precedent-setting disaster as well for future peace and security across the continent and globally too. Just think Taiwan or Estonia. It would destroy the sovereign integrity of democratic Ukraine. So just think about those talking points. Estonia, which happens to border Russia and NATO, is a NATO member. Oh yeah, Estonia is in trouble. Think Taiwan. Oh yeah, Taiwan is a province of China. So Taiwan is in trouble because of negotiated settlement. I mean, this is cartoonish. This is all imperialist rambling, and it's all maneuvering. It's all imperialist maneuvering. And here you go. There is an alternative, fortunately, using NATO's overwhelming power to decisively turn the military tide, and it only gets better. As previously argued here, direct, targeted, forceful Western action to repulse Russia's repulsive horde. Repulse Russia's repulsive horde. Yes, he was allowed to write that in a major publication. Repulse Russia's repulsive horde. It's not a vote for a third world war. It's not a vote for a third world war, guys. It's not. Just trust me, guys. Just trust me. It's the only feasible way to bring this escalating horror to a swift conclusion while ensuring Putin and those who might emulate him do not profit from lawless butchery. So there you have it, guys. Europe needs to be saving. It's not just Ukraine. NATO should act now to force Putin's marauding troops back inside Russia's recognized border. NATO should act now to force Putin's marauding troops back into Russia's recognized borders. Like, what does that mean? Come on, that's pretty obvious what that means. It means you need Simon Tisdall says, I don't vote for World War III here, but I want NATO to attack Russian troops in Ukraine. That's what he's saying. In East Ukraine, because that's where the majority of Russia's troops are. It's either they're in East Ukraine or they're attacking military installations out west, but they're mostly, in terms of on the ground, they're out east. They're fighting in the Donbass. They're fighting for the republics. They're fighting against Ukrainian shelling. They're not fighting Europe. They're not fighting NATO troops. If NATO troops were to target Russian troops, that's World War III, or at least what a World War III would look like under current conditions. May not be the most useful term. It'll be a global confrontation that we haven't seen since World War II, might be more accurate. But you have here Simon Tisdall saying, no, just trust me, guys. Just trust me. Nothing's going to happen. You're going to be fine. We just need NATO to blow shit up. We need NATO to confront Russia directly militarily. And this is the kind of unhinged stuff, right? And he used repulsive hordes, the most racist rhetoric you could use, right? The whole thing was a racist screed against Russia and Vladimir Putin. It was to really hit on the sentiments of the Eurozone and the Western imperialists and the U.S. imperialists in NATO. That was a lobby for NATO military action. So this is, I mean, Simon Tisdale, guys, this guy is a hawk. He's a neocon. He's a hawk. Let's just look at his articles. This isn't the first time that he's called for this. All right. So here you have the article. All right. And then you have what else? Timid West must draw a line in the sea and break Putin's criminal food blockade. Timid Biden condemns Ukrainians to an antagonizing war without end. So NATO in the U.S. in the West, they're being timid in this conflict. Timid, despite the fact that they started this proxy war with the coup, and now they're pumping weapons at amounts at like these back-breaking amounts, these neck-turning amounts. They're timid though. Ukraine pleads for weapons as Russian onslaught threatens to turn the tide. Right? So this is on and on and on and on and on. On and on. NATO should talk less and do more, or Ukraine will be torn a bit part by part. This is just in the last 3 months since April. Every single month, multiple times a month, Simon Tisdall is in The Guardian as the top foreign policy commentator, calling for World War III, calling for a global confrontation with Russia. It's absolutely unhinged. But this is the situation that we're in with these folks. This is the situation that we're in. These vultures, these predators, these imperialists, they want to see the maximalist situation. They're taking a maximalist position because they want the maximalist situation because they believe that will bring the swiftest benefits for the capitalist class and, of course, for the militarists, private or public, who are seeking both expansion at any means, NATO expansion by any means. So that's where we're at, guys. That's where we're at. All right. So I want to show you one more thing before we conclude the content part of this, I want to show you one more thing. This guy isn't smart either. Don't think Simon Tisdale is a smart guy. So Monthly Review Online published an article not too long ago, December 2021, commenting on Simon Tisdale, who said, in China's new age of imperialism, Xi Jinping gives a thumbs down to democracy. And Caitlin Johnstone, uh, uh, I would consider a friend, says, in anti-China propaganda, a cartoonish one says, in China's new age of imperialism, Xi Jinping gives a thumbs down to democracy. Beijing is aiming for global ascendancy, but its leader's vision of world domination is centralized, authoritarian, oppressive, and totalitarian. So the only time you see the word imperialism used in The Guardian is when it wants to criticize nations around the world. So what Simon Tisdale was arguing here was that China is the only imperialist country left, that China's imperialism is imperialism in all its forms still poses a threat, but it's no longer the imperialism of the West, rightly extricated and self-condemned. Today's threat emanates from the East. So Simon Tisdale has literally made the argument that China's not only China is an imperialist country, which is not just questionable, but flat out wrong. China is not imperialist. But Simon Tisdale has said that it's only imperialism, China's imperialism, which is a threat right now. Forget what Western imperialism, US-led Western imperialism has done. Forget about the colonialism, the plunder, the economic instability, the coups, the political instability, the strife, the chaos. Forget about the ruination of entire countries like Libya and Iraq. Forget about all of that. Forget about this military encirclement of Russia and China via NATO and the so-called Indo-Pacific Command. Forget all of that. Forget all of those threats. Forget the fact that millions upon millions upon millions of people have died, that there have been endless destabilization campaigns, and that there really has been any relief for the world, and that the military, the US and all of its partners, militaries are the biggest polluters, the US military being the biggest one. Forget all of that. Forget that the planet is being pushed to the brink socially, economically, and environmentally because of US militarism and the UK as a junior partner. Forget all of that. China's imperialism is the problem. China's imperialism, whatever that is supposed to mean, right? Its economic ascendancy, its capacity to build win-win cooperation, its capacity to develop infrastructure, and its commitment to climate change, renewable energy, all of that, that it's the threat. China's a threat. China's imperialism is so terrible that it eradicated extreme poverty, right? And the World Bank estimates that extreme poverty is going to go down significantly because of the Belt and Road Initiative. Let's forget, let's just be very scared about that, guys. That's an imperialism we definitely don't want in the world. We just want the US and UK led kind of imperialism, the one that destroys countries, throws us all into poverty and debt, reinforces racism, and divides the world in a way that's beneficial for just a few banks and a few monopolies, private monopolies that accumulate super profits off the backs of the majority of humanity. That's the kind of imperialism we all want. That's the one that we want. That's the one that Simon Tisdale says, jump on board, get on board with that. That's what that is the peak. That is peak Western media, Western corporate media propaganda. And that's why people like Simon Tisdale are cartoonishly dangerous, because just the fact that we have to respond to this nonsense shows that we are in a very difficult situation, that people like him can call for such dangerous actions and make such cartoonish positions, and they are allowed to do so, and there isn't any accountability. And so they have the power to shape the minds of people who are determining policy right now, whether just in their tacit support or whether it's through their direct intervention within the institutions of power under the imperialist arrangement. That is the danger of Simon Tisdale, everyone. It's not that he's correct. It's not that he's wrong. It's not that he's a propagandist. The danger is that he can exist in this way without any accountability, because he is ultimately parroting a scenario. While it may not be wanted by all in the ruling class or all at this or in that way or at the same time, it is wanted, and it is something that's desirable. Confrontation with Russia and China, propaganda against Russia and China, that is wanted and desirable in the main. And that is the danger here. And that's how he's making his money, is by peddling that very dangerous agenda.